Welcome to Marvel Vision, a podcast about Marvel, the MCU, and right now, Agatha All Along. I'm Alex.
It was Agatha all along. I'm Justin.
I'm Pete.
And we are going to be talking about episode 3 of the series, Through Many Miles of Tricks and Trials. If you haven't seen it on Disney Plus, go check it out. We're definitely going to jump into spoilers, but let's recap very briefly. The witches are finally on the Witches' Road. The coven is assembled, and it seems like we are getting a structure for the series as they enter a house, sort of a Real Housewives Lifetime
Sickest
style
beach house ever. Oh, dang.
Yeah, but we're getting like a light sense of that there. What it turns out the first trial is they have to drink some poison wine. They start hallucinating about their past, and ultimately it's up to Jennifer Kale to create a potion to save them. They don't save everybody, though, because Sharon Davis, a.k.a. Mrs. Hart, she's no longer hanging out down the street. She's dead at the end of the episode, and that's where we end. Lots of other stuff to get into here, including our first MCU canonical mention of Mephisto.
Boo.
After years,
Shout.
it's finally happening. I have to imagine this was Pete's least favorite episode of television of all time, killing off Deborah Jo Rupp and mentioning Mephisto, two things he doesn't like. So there
Exactly.
I got to think they're connected. You don't take out Rupp unless Mephisto's behind it.
Rupp's the only one that can take him down, honestly. For anybody who doesn't know, by the way, Mephisto is from Marvel Comics. He's one of the big bads. He's like a Thanos-level bad, weirdly, but also
What?
Judeo. He is.
I don't believe that at all. He just
He
breaks
is.
up marriages. He's like a fucking low-level...
He's macro and
he's the
micro.
demon
He does
because
macro, he does
they-
micro.
They don't strictly have the Judeo-Christian God and devil in there. They skirt around it for very obvious marketing and relationship with the reader's reasons, but he's the closest they come to the devil, even though there are other ones. So like Pete's saying, he does have a predilection for making deals. He very famously took Spider-Man and Mary Jane's marriage in exchange for the life of Aunt May. What he did with that marriage, TBD.
He didn't take it. He made a square deal to help out a buddy.
Oh, yeah? You're Team Mephisto over there? What the fuck are you talking
I'm
about?
just saying,
Square
why are you
deal?
mad? They made a deal, and then it happened. Like, there's nobody messed anything up there. Mephisto made a deal.
No.
This is
He released
it's
a
funny,
soul.
I will mention, just to give like even more context here. So there's a lot of things that could be going on, and we'll get into the actual plot of the show in a second, but this is something we've been talking about for years at this point. Going back to WandaVision very specifically,
Yes.
where there was a lot of speculation about, ooh, is Mephisto the villain? Is that the person who has trapped Wanda into this hex? And everybody online, anytime a new character showed up, was like, that's Mephisto. That's going to be Mephisto.
That's
Here comes
Mephisto.
Mephisto. To the point it became a joke throughout the MCU for the past 3 years whenever they were like, this actor has been cast in an unknown role in like Black Widow or whatever. It was like, that's Mephisto. Here comes Mephisto. So
Yeah.
I'll throw out there a couple of things that could be going on here because the context of what happens is Jennifer Kale pulls Teen aside, is like, hey, stop aligning yourself so hard with Agatha. I don't know if you know this, but the rumor is that she traded the life of her son for the Book of the Damned, which is the Darkhold, which he had was holding in the first series and now out of continuity based on the events of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. And she throws out a bunch of rumors. Maybe he's a demon. Maybe he's dead. Maybe he's an agent of Mephisto. That's pretty much how it comes in. The Mephisto reference seems pretty pointed. We could speculate about how it's going to pass throughout the show. Or it could be Jack Schaefer, who is the showrunner here, playing with fads because she knows that everybody speculated so wildly about WandaVision, so to throw in the name is going to send those alarm bells ringing. So it could be that, or it could be anywhere in between.
Well, see, for me, it's like I think it's more meaningful than just a troll, because I think the troll reveal that Mephisto, Teen is Mephisto, is my speculation. I think that's a big story. That's a story to spin out of the second to last episode of this series. So that feels right to me because the way that the setup in this episode is like she gave away her son. Wink. I was like way too far over the line. We had speculated that before, but it's too obvious. So now I think it's going to shift to revealing that Teen is actually perhaps the villain here.
No, that would really suck because I like Teen, but also like, why are we working so hard on such a crappy character? Who likes Mephisto in the Marvel universe? Nobody. It's
I'm
not
going to throw
fun.
something out, Pete. I think they should have done Mephisto as the villain for overall phase 4, 5, 6 instead of this multiverse stuff entirely. Like that was one of my big takeaways from this episode is like WandaVision was so successful. They started off with the mystical side of the MCU, leaned into it harder with Doctor Strange in the multiverse of madness, even though they were doing multiverse stuff. Mephisto is more interesting to me, like working in the magic side that's very different from Thanos, gives an entirely different flavor to it. Obviously, they went in a different direction, but I think that's interesting.
Well, it's
Well, and
easy
I'll
to
agree
say
with
after
you.
the fact. Yeah, real.
Well, I'll agree with you by saying it gives them a nice emotional hook too. By Mephisto could be tempting all the different heroes in different ways, turning some of them into villains. It would have been a
Ruining
cool
relationships, left
ruining
and right.
relationships, making deals that are square deals. I'll
Stop.
take that deal every day.
Stop
I'll take
it.
that deal every day.
You're happily married. Don't say things like this.
I'm not saying that exact deal.
It
I mean, how do
seems like
know?
you are.
I remember
I put my
you told
hand
me
on the dark
not
hold.
not to talk about your story, Justin, but I remember you told me this great story about you going down to the crossroads and the devil being like, "I'll challenge you to a fiddle battle." And you were like, "No need. Here's my soul."
Yeah, I was like, I don't play the fiddle. I'm not going to do that.
Just
What,
take
you
it. Go with
nuts?
me. Square deal.
Sound awful. Exactly. Have my soul. And in exchange, I saved the life of Pete LePage. Ironic. I can't believe I haven't brought this up. Mephisto brought you back to life, and you're mad about it.
Yeah, you were dead for like 5 years. Honestly, it was gross.
Wow. I don't remember that.
Crushed under a pile of Punisher comics. I read.
As we always knew.
It's a great way to go.
Yeah. You were like, Garth Ennis.
I'm happy, he said, faded from his eyes.
Just to sort of-
just one,
yeah, go-
one last
go
thing
ahead.
on Mephisto. Pete, you're like, who likes Mephisto? There were people tracking Al Pacino's whereabouts because they thought he might be the one playing Mephisto when WandaVision came out. That's how deep people were. Random people who were like, didn't know who Mephisto was and were suddenly heavily invested in who's wearing red makeup on set right now to try to track this guy. So there is a thing here, and that's why I feel like a troll is a little maybe too nasty for what this show wants to do. I think there's more to it.
Yeah, and we have, however it turns out, I'm not going to be upset if we don't get Mephisto by the end here, but I do think there are too many connections, to your point, for it not to be a very pointed reference. One thing, there's a popular theory that I think we talked about on the last podcast, but I don't remember, that Rio in the first episode says, "My black heart beats for you," and then her symbol turns out to be a black heart that Lilia Calderu put on the list of coven members. Blackheart is the name of the son of Mephisto. Not exactly, but that's how he's thought about in the comics. So people are speculating that Rio is Blackheart. To your point, Teen in this episode, way too helpful, way too eager to
Knows
give
too
the
much.
information and push everybody further down the road and be like, "Oh, hey, do you guys want to drink this wine? Oh, hey, do you want to check out this invitation? Hey, let's do this thing. Just found this ingredient for you," which definitely set my alarm bells. And like you're saying, every indication in this episode is that he's Nicholas Scratch, the son of Agatha, but could actually be the manipulator, the villain all along. There are some other clues, by the way, that I'm not going to get into because they're way too spoilery from other things happening outside of the show, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody that is not what's going on, but we will see how it turns out.
Can we do a temp check real quick? Because I'm just wondering if I'm the only one who, after this episode, was a little kind of like, oh no, is this what we're doing? Because I feel like we had this great kind of setup. Oh, they barely made it to the road, but they did. And I was like, okay, it's clear that Agatha is going to have to learn to be a team player for this to actually work, for them to make it to the end of the road. And I'm just kind of like, she's fighting, the whole time, like she's kicking people out of the way to get herself taken care of, and then like killing off maybe one of the greatest characters on the show. I'm just kind of like, oh man, I'm just wondering, am I the only one who's like a little down on the dumps on the show now after this episode, or are you guys feeling good or better after this episode?
Justin, are you hanging out in the dumps?
Yeah.
I actually felt pretty good about this episode. I felt like it was a strong idea. The execution was a little wobbly. I want to talk about that in a second, but I do like the idea. It almost has a Goonies feel to it.
Well, the Goonies slide was great to see. I got very excited about that.
The slide was a big key into that, but it reminded me of the way the Goonies movie is structured, where they're on a journey and they're like, oh no, we have to solve this puzzle, and everyone sort of is getting after each other a little bit, but they come together to solve it and then move on to the next thing. And I think that's a good structure for this show. I'm really sad to see Sharon go, because I thought Sharon was actually being very funny, and I just love her flavor in this. So, because the other characters are cool, but they're just being so much. They're being so like, I'm the nasty one. So I say the Patty LaPone is just the mystical one. I was like, let's have these be people and not just sort of things that say what they need to say in the right moment.
I'll go even further. It sounds like I'm still the most positive on the show. I had a blast watching this episode. I agree with your criticism.
You liked when Sharon died?
I loved it. I loved it because I hate the 70s show and the stuff
What about the 90s show
has done in her real life. I actually don't know. I don't know anything about her. I'm sure she's a lovely person.
You don't know this, Pete, but Alex was supposed to be Kelso in that 70s show, but Rupp cut him. He got roughed.
I was in the original pilot, if you go back, and the entire time they cut to the other characters. Whenever they cut to them, they're like, ugh.
Interesting choice.
Yeah, which was not a good feeling, to be honest with you. The thing that I really liked about this episode, to take a little one step further from what you were saying, Justin, I do think we really started to get towards character relationships in this episode. There's still a sense of them figuring it out, but that's what the group is doing as well, because they come into this being like, we're individuals, to the point that Agatha restates everybody's motivation out loud to them to remind them and the audience about it, which I'm fine with. I think like treating it like episodic television versus chapter 3 of a book or the third part, the third 10 minutes of a movie or whatever is fine. Like, remind people in case they forgot what happened last week. That's cool with me. But once we start to get into the episode, I do think they have these nice little mini arcs of, say, Alice and Teen. Alice is very standoffish from Teen, and then ultimately by the end, it's just like little subtle things of, after her experience with her hallucination, she's lightly touching his arm and standing next to him, and it's showing an intimacy and a collaboration that's going on there. Same thing with like the whole Agatha arc over the course of the episode. Whoever Teen turns out to be, it's clear she thinks he is her son.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that, Pete, I don't know if this is exactly what you're saying, but like, you can't have, even though it's fun, you can't have Catherine Hahn be like, I'm evil witch, and that is my one defining characteristic. You need an emotional arc for her, and I think it's very clear based on this episode, the emotional arc for her is going from being, I don't care about anybody, I will throw literally anybody under the bus, to finding out she needs something more, and then dealing with this trauma, whatever she did in her past, in terms of Nicholas Scratch, the baby, and giving it up for the Darkhold. I do think there is every chance, and this is wild speculation here, but there was a promo that came out before the show where Rio says, ooh, the bodies are really piling up. I think Sharon's the first one to die. I think we're probably going to see the rest of the coven die, probably except for Agatha and Teen at the end. And then ultimately Agatha is going to be presented with this choice of have her power back or get her coven back to life, and I think that's what she's going to choose.
Aren't you guys worried about that, though? I mean, I don't want to watch a show and watch the people that I like just die off one by one. You know what I mean? Like, that's not fun. Like, I want to see them conquer. What do you hear about
getting old, Pete?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm here to escape. Like, I got enough real life going on. I don't need extra reminders of how fragile life is. And I just feel like it's a sad setup of like, okay, every episode, one of your favorites is done. We're going to vote him off the island. And then you got to kind of sit through it and then watch a team fight and not get along. And
but I think they are going to get along. Like, you already get a sense of that by the end, Pete. And I think we're going to get more of that as we progress through the series. I do understand what you're saying, But I will say, from a different perspective, seeing Sharon die at the end, if we do get a new character dying every episode, that limits the interaction. So that is a little bit of a bummer to me. But I do think
Yeah.
we're going to see these characters grow closer and care about each other more, particularly
I hope
Agatha.
so.
And I'm
I
excited
loved
about that.
Agatha's pep talk. I thought that was great. I was like, yes, a little bit. And then, but
I also thought this was a very funny episode, by the way. I thought Catherine Hahn, always hilarious, but there's so many moments like her doing, like you're saying, the pep talk where she's like, you want to do this, you want to do this, you want to do this, and where does she go? Where is she? Where's she gone? That made me laugh out loud. And there were a bunch of other moments throughout as well that I
the
laughed
tagline
heartily.
at the end of Who's
Oh,
Sharon, I was like, come on.
That was
Great
fun.
musical choice at the end.
Heads will roll. Yeah.
Very cool. I like just a couple lines from Sharon also. This came from Talbot's You Can't Have It. I thought that was very funny, just great joke. The way she related to the wine I thought was fun. There was another great...
Yeah, when she chugged the wine, she's like, I've had a really stressful day. It's just really funny.
Yeah. So it's sad to see Sharon go. Hopefully they can move some of her comedy elements over to other people.
I mean,
but so
Shashir
we're talking,
is hysterical. I mean, give her funny stuff to do. I mean,
she has to be so acerbic for the character they've given her that I hopefully she will get to, as everyone warms up a little bit.
I mean, she's
But
a hilarious comedian. It would be nice
Yeah.
to see her be able to kind of flex that muscle.
And I think they probably will. But Sharon also, Bury Me in That Kitchen, very fun.
Yeah.
But I did want to say, like, they set up this premise of, like, they're in this sort of rich Nantucket home, maybe referencing TV shows that have that. Any Nicole Kidman show, rich family problems.
All the Nicole Kidman shows.
Truly, and then they sort of have this. The game of the episode is they have to build witches stuff out of rich white lady stuff. I think that's super funny. And then they just didn't really play it. There was just too much going on for them to have the fun. And this is what I was talking about in the earlier episodes, especially the first one when we do the Mayor of Easttown stuff. I'm like, oh, this is so fun. And then we don't get to have the fun. And so I'm feeling that absence of premise right there. And I get it. There's a lot going on. But I'm just like, I just want this show, like I think I said, it's like the engine's humming. But they just won't release the parking brake on the comedic side of it. And so that gives me hesitation.
And a perfect example, for me at least, was like, they're like, oh, okay, hey, rule number one, whatever you do, don't go off the road. And the first thing they do is veer right off the road to go to that beach house. I mean, that's hilarious, but it wasn't really played for comedy as much as it could have been.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, Justin. I think, I don't know, I took Real Housewives away from this, particularly because of the Botox thing that happened at the beginning, right off with the poison. But I agree with you. Like, they took that one step, they did that, took that away, and then it was just finding ingredients and having hallucinations. So there's still a lot of setup going on, it feels like, particularly with the hallucinations giving. We found out backstories for Jennifer Kale, I think was the big one. We know her magic was blocked. We get to see the doctor who did that, presumably, although we don't know how, and drowning her, which is pretty terrifying. For Lilia Calderu, we get to see something back in, like, I don't know, Salem times, I assume.
Yeah, some Victorian.
The specter of
situation.
death behind somebody else. So who knows whether that's a plague thing or a witch thing or exactly what's going on there.
We get Agatha tucking in her book, which I know we all do with our comic books every night. So
Absolutely.
That was nice.
Yeah. Pete's been doing that with his Punisher comic books, which is, again, how he is going to die. We've seen that.
Yeah, we've established
Fingers
canonically.
Yes. I was most surprised, though, about Alice's, because her big motivation being like, I got to find my mom. And then, even though it's a hallucination, seeing her mom so quickly, I couldn't believe that. I felt like they almost got to that too quickly among everything.
Yeah, I agree with you. I did like the way I was like, oh, this is a very efficient way for us to get a little peek into each of them, as opposed to focusing on one of them sort of lost style for the whole episode. So I did like that. I was like, perfect. Now they have more time to do the fun stuff. No time for that either? Okay, too bad.
Just to speculate from a writing perspective, I think maybe what happened here is they're trying to give a sense of WandaVision in terms of we are doing TV parodies, but they didn't want to one it. They didn't want to throw them into Real Housewives, film it exactly the same way,
Yeah.
have the same angles, have them talking like that or trapped in that in any way. But they wanted to give the sense of that because they know that's what people liked from WandaVision. So maybe that's why it's feeling 50-50.
I get
I think-
that. So just last thing, Pete, and then it's all you. Like, I get that. Like, we don't want to do in a parody, I think they're like, then we're stuck doing the parody. But for me, it's like, don't stand on stage at my comedy show and tell me 9 setups without giving me a punchline. Like, that just doesn't work as a thing. So you can't half play it. Just a little bit. They were right there. They literally found the creams and stuff that was the punchline, but they didn't play that. And it just felt like so close, but so far away. Sorry.
Yeah, speaking of a writing perspective, I do think it was really smart to be like, okay, I'm going to write in a bunch of things where we all have to chug a bunch of wine. I mean, that's just smart, fun writing right there. It's like, yeah, we should probably have to drink
thirsty.
more. Yeah. Like, let's just drink a lot of wine on set. That sounds like a fun.
Well, do you want to be total jerks about it? What would the other thing be? This is the worst form of criticism and discussion, but
Then why do it?
I don't know, because we're on a podcast and we're talking about stuff. So they do have the drinking the wine. They have sort of like the fuzzy, highly lit camera thing going on. They've got the Botox from the Real Housewives. I think they could have, just to throw it out there, if they were going for Real Housewives, got into a confessional or something like that. Even if they're like, what am I doing here? How did I end up in this thing? I think to give a little more sense of that reality show, that would have been good. Maybe changing the music would have been good. If they're going for more of a Lifetime thing, they could have played up the music there a little bit. Like when Sashir Zamata pulls Tina aside, it could be the very ominous soap opera style music.
Or back on reality show, Can I Steal You for a Second? We could have gotten a wine fight. They would have played, I think, on the emotionality of what was going on as well. Any of the, like, if they were going for the sort of prestige but schlocky drama, Nicole Kidman style TV show, they could have played any number of hyper melodramatic, like if they were all having some big revelation about their family at the same time, that could have been like a cry off kind of a thing. There are a lot of ways to play it that I think would have supported the plot as well.
Yeah, well, I think you can do it without full on going into Wanda's Hex style trap to this parody. You're just playing it. Like we're saying. What were we going to say, Pete?
I was just going to say, I was very happy that everybody else got to witness the kind of sigil thing where he can't say his name and he can't kind of, so that was like, as far as getting everybody on the same page so they can finally start to kind of work together as a coven and be, that kind of coven. So I'm glad we kind of made a step forward with that.
I thought that was a really nice move just from an information perspective, because otherwise we would have been speculating, it's just Agatha. The spell is just on Agatha. Having everybody else see it, it really, like you're saying, Pete, widens it out. I also thought there was a really nicely blocked shot there, literally blocked, where they see the sigil, everybody starts commenting on it, and Agatha is like, well, let's get away from that. We don't need to add literally steps in front of him to block the view, because my assumption, and I think this is what the show is telling us, is she thinks he's Nicholas Scratch. She wants to spend as much time with him as possible because if the spell is broken, the sigil is broken, they need to move on with that. So she wants to hold on to that for as long as possible.
Wants to stay in this before she has to really deal with it. Yeah.
And also whatever she did, she doesn't want that to come out. So I think that's the other side of it.
Well, it's tough because, and you guys have children, it's one of those things where when you're walking out of the hospital with your new baby, they're like, do you want to trade for a book? Because we got some books over here, you get a free book for a baby. Yeah. That's how they do the cars for kids too. It's a tough decision.
Yeah, it's an even swap. Cars for kids.
Yeah. And that's a solid
Totally
deal
fair.
too. Mephisto always hanging out at hospitals trading books for babies, and does a good job.
Everybody wins.
Everybody wins. What would you trade a baby for? What book?
Ooh, great call.
I mean, probably Punisher's first appearance.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Really nice.
9.6 CGC graded.
Oh yeah, definitely.
cool. Very cool. Yeah, you want to die on
I mean, for a
graded
fresh baby,
comics.
you would think maybe a 9.8. Come on.
Fresh baby.
Everyone knows the fresher the baby, the better it is.
Go into any hospital in the world, be like, where do you keep the fresh babies?
Yeah.
Just
squeeze them
dust
like an
off a little
avocado.
bit.
Yeah, we're just a bunch of old babies on this podcast, let's be honest.
That's no doubt about that.
Rotten babies.
What to expect when you're expecting? Sort of a bad trade, really.
Keep trading it
Maybe
back
for
and
maybe.
forth.
Yeah. I want to get some of that sigil to throw over my kids, Mm-hmm. Say, guys, sigil.
So they can't say their own names in public?
Yeah. Guys, sigil.
While we're just randomly talking about things here, I'll throw out my favorite line of the episode was when the whole house starts flooding and the oven opens up. Patty LuPone's line, I am not climbing in an oven. That happened to a friend of mine once. She had a lovely house too. Great.
That was hilarious.
Very funny line.
It was funny.
And that was to big up the comedy a little bit. That's like 3 jokes in a row in one line. So good stacking.
I mean,
of the
you got
comedy.
Patty LuPone, lean into it. I mean, she can just kill it with the liners. I mean, come on, man.
I also liked her shouting "Green Teen." It's Green Teen. It's just sort of very strange.
Yeah. One other thing to give a shout out to, I really like I'm sure there's CGI we're not seeing, but the practical sets that they're using on this show, it feels like a stark contrast to most Marvel stuff. Like, again, I'm sure they're fleshing out backgrounds and things and whatever, but just the Witch's Road, the water slide that they go down at the end, very fun. It's fun to actually see these things in practice.
The mud that Sharon gets almost sucked into, I thought was really cool.
And again, I'm saying this, and then they're going to release the making of Agatha All Along, and you're going to see it's just like 5 tennis balls were rolling around in a green screen studio, but whatever.
Digital mud, man.
Digital mud.
I do have a question. So at the end, Pete, you highlighted this. Agatha says, "Who's Sharon?" Is she being fun or just like, forget it, we have to move on? Or is there a spell at play here?
Ooh, that's interesting. I didn't think of that because I thought she was just being fun because it was a whole thing where she was like, "My name is Sharon." Like it was. Yeah. So
I think it's just a payoff to the bit, honestly. Like, I hear you. It could be another thing, but that feels like we've already got one forgetting a spell.
Right.
Why bring in another one? I think it was just a punchline, personally.
And then it sort of resets her as not nice after she was being nice. So that could be. It just struck me as like a very quick thing to say when they just found a corpse. Just be like, "Ha, punchline, zing." But I've been asking for punchlines all episode. So
yeah, that's true. About? Yeah, what are you talking about?
Anything else from the episode that you'd like to throw out there? Things you liked, lines, etc.
The off with the head song at the end was really hysterical. It's just frustrating because I want them to work together.
Do you think they should have cut off Sharon's head to really make that?
That's a punchline.
Yeah, there you go.
That's what I want when I go see a stand-up show, someone to be beheaded.
That's what they did during the French Revolution, right? Like a tight 5 and then they'd chop their heads off.
Yeah, the guillotine was the closing act. It's just it's.
Thank you. You've been a great audience.
It's scary.
Don't forget.
They'd offer them a cigarette, or they'd say, "Do you want to do a tight 5?" The choice is yours.
Yeah. Choose the tight 5. Honestly,
always
last longer. Cigarettes 2 to 3 minutes. Tight 5, 5 to 6 minutes. If you
can milk a cigarette 5 to 8, bro. Come on, dude.
Really?
Milk a cigarette.
I got to take on smoking. Honestly, it sounds great.
Yeah. Like this. Dice Clay, is that what you're trying to do?
Dice Man cometh next episode, I bet.
Yeah. That's Mephisto.
I mean,
good casting.
I want them to start working together so bad, but I also really, they're such interesting characters that I am looking forward to getting know more about them. You know what I mean? The one character talking about that sick tattoo she had on her arm, like you're getting like these starts of these really cool stories. But yeah, I really love all the acting, and I think the casting is phenomenal. So I think it's a good sign that you want more from the characters.
Yeah, I think
except for Sharon.
Except for Sharon.
Oh, come on, man. Stop stepping on my
Next episode,
Sharon,
they're going to be like, "Oh, we forgot to cut her head off so she doesn't come back." That's what you do with humans.
We need to put Sharon to rest.
Yeah. I will laud the show for doing a good job of laying the information out there, and not in. I feel like it's mostly not doing it in like an Easter eggy mystery way, with some exceptions. Like obviously the identity of teen is that sort of thing, but like you're saying with the tattoo, that's just more information that we're getting about Alice and about her situation. It's not necessarily about like, what's the tattoo? Let's focus on the tattoo. It's about her character and helping her. And I'll throw out there, I don't remember where I read it, but there was something where Jack Schaefer was talking about the teen mystery. Apparently when they were coming up with that in the writer's room, she's like, it's fine to have the mystery of the teen, but why are we doing that? What does that say about Agatha? How does that tie to Agatha? How does that tie to her emotional journey? And I do think that's what we're ultimately getting here, and that gives me a lot of faith in the show.
Yeah, I mean, and in the episode, she's playing the Agatha thing so hard. She's so like, acerbic and like, but coy and winky. And I'm ready for her to just blow past that.
Yeah, like that motorcycle is blowing past your house. I get it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, wow, that was really well timed.
I also want to see Agatha on her bike from the comics. That would be pretty cool. Her Agatha mobile.
You're talking about a bicycle.
Oh, yes, her bicycle. Absolutely. All right. Well, why don't we wrap up then and talk about, we'll go to our vision board and talk about what we're looking forward to next episode or what we want to see happen. Pete, what's on your vision board?
I don't want anybody else to die, man. I want us to avoid a death for an episode. That'd be nice. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And
literally, that's the only thing that is not going to come true. Man. It's the one thing you're definitely going to get is someone.
And I want Agatha to be nicer to her coven that she put together. And
oh, you want the last episode? That's what you.
Yeah,
want.
You're definitely looking for the last episode.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll see what I can do. I'll see if I can cut out the 4 or 5 episodes in the middle. Justin,
and I want them
you?
to bring back Sharon, and then also somehow get the Plaza in there sooner rather than later.
She'll be back. She'll be back.
No,
That's
I know,
not a spoiler.
And that's what I was going to say is like, I want Aubrey Plaza was such a part of the pilot and we didn't get any of her here. So like, I think we need a little bit of that flavor back in this. Is she pursuing them? Is she Mephisto? Who's Mephisto? Am I Mephisto?
Mm-hmm. I hope not.
We're falling into the old traps yet again. And I just want them to continue this sort of very episodic Goonies style problem. Fun situation, and they solve it in an interesting way, and just play it harder, play for the fun.
Yeah, I'll agree with that, Steph. I think my 2 hopes for the next episode is 1, keep up with the episodic structure. As I've probably said a million times on this podcast, I'm a big fan of when TV is TV. So keeping up with that, if we have hit this rhythm with the structure, I think that's really good. But also, like we were discussing, whatever the parody or satire element that they're doing in the next episode, I do hope they hit it a little harder, like we were talking about. Not fully in it. They don't need to be trapped in it, but I want to see them, like you were saying, Justin, playing those games a little more, because that's fun while we're developing the characters.
Well, and like to your point, like that should be the solve. They should solve the parody is how they need to get out, which is what they sort of do here. They use the parody elements to make the potion. And then just to have that be the premise, because I agree, like we can't redo like, oh no, I'm this character. We saw that in WandaVision. It didn't really congeal in the Mare of Easttown episode. So let's just do it for what we want.
Yeah. And if you'd like to support this podcast and all the podcasts we do, patreon.com/Comic Book Club. Also, we do a live show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. to Facebook and YouTube. Come hang out. We would love to chat with you about Agatha All Along. Apple, Spotify, Android, or the app of your choice to subscribe, listen, and follow the show at Comic Book Live on Twitter/X, Comic Book Club Live on TikTok and Instagram, comicbookclublive.com for this podcast and many more. Until next time, stay marvelous.
So I got to run, guys. I'm getting a coffee with Mephisto. He's got some other new deal he wants to talk to me
don't take
about.
it, man. Don't take it.
Never
There's no free coffee, man.
I'd give away my soul for a good cup of coffee.
Oh, boy.